Hi everyone, and welcome to the another edition of the Multifamily webinar series. Today we're going to focus on the 2016 partner recognition. Next slide. Today, joining us, I'm Amy Ross. Hello. A lot of you speak to me quite frequently. We also had David Ruggiero, the other multifamily account manager, joining us.
Hello.
David, hello. And we also have Chantel Key, who's going to be our webinar administrator, and who also, by the way, is over all of our webinars and in-person events that we're doing this year with the Better Buildings Challenge under the multifamily work. So welcome, Chantel. Today, our agenda, this is just kind of a brief overview of our agenda. We're going to really drill down into the annual summit recognition. I know some of you have really participated in that in the past couple of years. We felt like we wanted to be a little bit more organized in how we're presenting it to you, so voila, webinar. We're going to talk about the types of recognition for partners and the different achievements, the partner achievements that it takes in order to be recognized. And then we'll also talk about how partners earn each type of recognition, again, those achievements. And we'll have a nice Q&A session at the end. We're going to be stopping at different points throughout the webinar to make sure you have an opportunity to ask questions. And Chantel next is going to go through the logistics in the webinar.
Yes, thank you, Amy. So we have two ways that you can ask questions. If you're joining us today with your telephone through that audio, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask your question verbally, or you can type your question in the question text box. And if you're joining us today with the audio through your telephone, we ask that you ask your question via the question text box. And at different times throughout the webinar and at the end, we will read your question out loud.
Great, thanks, Chantel. All right, so what's the point of partner recognition, I think is probably where we need to start. DOE and HUD both want to publicly celebrate and recognize your achievements as Better Buildings Challenge partners. And the way that they do this, it basically all revolves around the summit because that is our biggest annual event. We look at it as the summit as not only an educational event, but as a celebration of how far the Better Buildings Challenge has come. It's also a time for us to bring together all of the different accelerators and financial allies and partners from all the different sectors, bring everybody together in the hopes of some cross-pollination, industry-wide cross-pollination. So it's a great event. As you'll see below, this year it's being held between May 9th and May 11th. The agenda this year, I will say, I'm very impressed. I'm excited. It looks like a great education-focused agenda, and we've got some different stuff going on in there that you haven't seen in years past. So would highly encourage your participation in the summit this year. This year, you're going to see this March 1 deadline, and you're going to hear David and I both harp on about this March 1st deadline. So we wanted to put it up here front and center. And we'll talk about that March 1st deadline as we move through. But as we focus in on the different ways that partners can achieve recognition, such as showcase projects, implementation models, and then also through data submission and data displays. The March 1st deadline is for I would say a very solid first effort of each of those things. It is not the deadline to have a showcase project hosted online, so I just want to make that very clear. In saying that, though, David and I, not to speak for David, but I'm going to anyway, David and I both would, if you do submit something by that March 1st deadline, we would greatly appreciate your active participation in getting the showcase project or implementation model live or the data kinks worked out so that we can get those things up on the Better Buildings Challenge website in a timely manner before the summit starts, because that's when our highest level of website traffic really happens. So next slide. So let's dig into the types of recognition that partners can gain. The first, and I think the one that's kind of, I envision jazz fingers, everybody out there going jazz fingers over, is the White House recognition event invitation. They're very limited space for this. There are some categories that you're going to see throughout the webinar that are pretty standard, that the White House event, particularly like I think new partners and goal achievement, you'll see that you definitely get a White House invitation, but those are fairly hard to come by, and so anyway, White House recognition event. Number two, in the progress update, every year the Better Buildings Challenge puts together this big progress update, and it's sent to Congress and kind of everywhere, everybody everywhere, all of the connections within DOE and throughout the network, to show the achievements of the Better Buildings Challenge. And so there are two ways that partners can really be shown off here and recognized. One is they're noted in a partner listing in the progress report with the different levels of recognition for the different achievements that partners can gain. And then also highlighted in the text. So we had several instances last year, and I think you'll see this in the webinar, where partners had maybe an innovative implementation model, and so DOE pulled that out and really wanted to focus on that and make that front and center as a piece of their achievement, as the Better Buildings Challenge achievement. So those are the two ways that you can be highlighted in the progress update. So number three is the Summit plenary presentation and awards lunch. Every year at the Better Buildings Summit, we have a plenary presentation and a luncheon. And you can either be called out verbally for your achievements, or you can be notated on the PowerPoint slides playing through the presentation. The fourth way is a letter of achievement from the DOE or HUD secretary. And the fifth way is a DOE press release, or releases, depending on the number that they send out surrounding the Better Buildings Summit. Next slide. Great. So how do you get recognized? What are you doing to get recognized? There are multiple ways, and again, these are directly connected to what we just spoke of, which is the type of recognition. So the first way is through goal achievement. David's going to cover this portion of the webinar. I'm going to be handing it over to him in just a few minutes. And then you've got solutions, which are your showcase project and your implementation model. You've got data collection, your data collection efforts. There are different ways, especially for multifamily with the uphill struggle that a lot of us have. There are multiple ways that you can be recognized through data collection, and then also just through pure participation. So this really is for new partners and the new water participation that we're rolling out this year. Next slide. Great. So David, I'm going to hand it to you here.
All right, and you said you didn't want to speak for me, but you did, so I'm going to put in my own words what I think should be said, and that's March 1st. The same thing that Amy said, March 1st is a hard and fast deadline for us to start getting a good picture on what the summit will look like. Data does not have to be perfect, fully vetted, nor to showcase projects, nor to IMs. Just get us your best efforts, let us work with you. And we've been gearing up towards all of this for several months with the webinar series, and now this is how you can reward DOE, and DOE can reward you by sharing this information, and they can give you the recognition for doing so. So the first few slides that I'm going to cover is specific to goal achievers, and as Amy said, it's those people that achieved 20% or better, or the stated goal that they made when they joined the challenge. The challenge at a minimum requires or requests that you make a 10-year commitment and that you reduce energy use intensity by 20% or better. So if you're a 20% reduction candidate, that's what we're looking for. If you wanted to go a little bit long, as some of our partners did, once you reach that level, great, you get all sorts of recognition the first year that you do that. you get a lot of recognition. The next year, you fall into what is known as this category here, progress update, the summit plenary presentation. You're asked to stand, take a bow, awards lunch, the same thing, and then White House recognition event. Last year, I was going to say if you could slide down to the next slide, but that's me. The goal achievers in last year's summit were a list of 9. You can see them up here to the left. And those were everyone that achieved that for the first year. And they got all of the bells and whistles, the White House event, the recognition. And you see some of them as high as 36, and then those just coming in at the at their minimum level of performance at 20%. So it doesn't look like any of our multifamily partners are going to be falling into goal achievers this year or since the last year. What I've seen in the data that I've reviewed so far and comparing it to last year, we had two to three people in around 9%. And reviewing the data this year, they're up a few percentage points. A few people came in at 13 or 14% savings, but no one at the 20% yet. So this is something that we all can look forward to, and we should be aiming for. But there are also other levels of goal achievement that DOE wants you to be recognized for. One would be just to set a new goal, which is, hey, guess what I've done? I've reached my goal. I'm going to make yet a further commitment. I don't believe there's been a case where someone has said, well, I want to go for 20% and I'm not even there yet, but I'm going to stretch it out to 30%. But that'd be interesting to see if someone did that. But anyone that sets a new goal and meets that goal, here's the progress update, posting, the summit, plenary presentation, the awards lunch. It's the full complement of recognition. So, I think I just missed one. No, that was it. So those are the few things that the goal achievers do get, which is first year out, repeated years as long as you're not sliding back in your performance, and whether you set a new goal record. So unless there are any questions, we should all be busy working on our goals. Chantel, do we have any questions coming up?
No, no questions.
All right. Amy, ready to take over the next slide?
Of course.
There you go.
All right, so we're going to do a poll right quick. Have any of you published a showcase project through the Better Buildings Challenge at this point? Chantel's going to release the poll to you guys so that you can take a look.
We do have one question that just came in. Do we want to answer that while we wait for the poll?
Sure.
Okay. It reads, does setting a new goal include water?
Go ahead, David.
Thank you very much. Water is, well, one of the first elements on the planet, but it's one of the last to come into the Better Buildings Challenge. There are a few questions that remain around water. Water is a totally different animal. There's a separate category for presentation for people that have taken the water challenge. And I think it falls into that category, which Amy will be addressing at the end. Do you agree with that assessment, Amy?
Yeah, and I would just say that since this is the first year that we've had a true water commitment, some of you participated in the water pilot previously, but this is a true BBC you are really committing to 20% water reduction. So this year there's not a category for achieving that goal and then adding a new goal or setting a new goal, but I would envision maybe next year or the following year that will be something that's created. Certainly something DOE is probably going to need to consider for next year, particularly with multifamily,
Yeah,
partners.
this year it's a new category, so if you take the pledge, you would get recognition.
Yeah.
And part of it.
So it looks like we've got our poll results here. So 72% have not published a showcase project and 28% have. And we've got about, and then we can, Chantel, we're happy to roll on to the next slide, but we've got about, I think if you look on the Better Buildings website, the Solution Center, you'll see that we've got about 27 or 28 showcase projects that are live. So it's definitely a good, and I would say somewhat painless way to get recognized. So if we could move to the next slide. So that leads us into the solution section of this of the presentation. If you've ever completed a showcase project, then you do get highlighted or notated in the progress update, which is the progress report that you see there that was released in 2015, but it contains 2014 information. And you'll, of course, every BBC partner gets a copy of this whenever it's published. So, next slide. All right, showcase project with 20% actual savings since the last Better Buildings Summit. And this only applies if you've not been recognized for actual savings in previous years. So for those of you who have completed the showcase project, and for those of you or who have published the showcase project, and for those of you who have not, you'll notice on the template that David and I frequently hand out, we'll either accept expected results, expected savings, or we'll accept actual savings. What this particular achievement is the actual savings. So for those of you who have submitted a showcase project that doesn't have actual savings but has projected savings, one way for you to get recognized is to update the data in your showcase project with actual numbers. It's an easy way to get recognized because you're probably already tracking that data anyway because you went so far as to create a showcase project. So the recognition for that, the aligning recognition is in the progress update. Either you'll be highlighted or notated in the text. And also the summit plenary presentation, you'll be highlighted there as well. Next slide. All right. I had no idea we were doing this last year, but as I was walking down the hall, and I think I was walking with one of our partners, I'm not going to call out any names, but we literally walked right beside a poster of his showcase project, and I said, wow, good to know. So you will find other ways that you'll be recognized, even if we're not listing it in this kind of formal setting. There are different things that DOE does that we don't necessarily even know about, and this is a great example of that. It's just an example of 3 posters that were on display last year at the Better Building Summit, highlighting really successful showcase projects in and around the actual summit. So, next slide. So we're going to do another quick another quick poll. How many of you have completed an implementation model? And Chantel's going to go ahead and administer the poll. The image that you saw on the screen was one of our newest implementation models from REACH. And they wrote something up on passive house and integrate passive house, the integration of passive house and affordable housing, which is a really interesting implementation model if any of you have not had the opportunity to see that yet. I highly suggest going on to the Better Building Solution Center and taking a look, so, along with some of the other ones that we have available. So, Chantel, do we have any questions out there at this point? A lot of this is fairly cut and dry.
No questions yet.
Great. Yeah, a lot of this is fairly cut and dry. So. We don't have as many implementation models as showcase projects, as you all have probably guessed at this point, because they are a little bit of a heavier lift. I will say we've added some resources this year to our team and to our abilities in order to help a little bit more with some of that heavy lift of an implementation model. We do have more team staff members who are ready and able and willing to call and actually interview you. They're willing to write narrative for you. We do have some folks who are chipping in and doing a little bit more on the implementation model piece of your commitment at this point. So if you're interested in creating one, please feel free to reach out to me or David, either whichever one of us is your account manager.
Amy, I might also add, just to rectify IMs that have been started or stalled. I know I have a few in my to-do box, so now's a great chance to get that out there, since you did note that we have added staff and we have some recognition that we'd like to give people.
Exactly. And we'll go through that recognition next. So yeah, as you can see, I mean, showcase projects are a little bit easier to do and complete, but like I said, we do have some help here now if anybody's interested in completing. So Chantal, I think we can move on to the next slide unless we have some questions. Great. So with solutions, so carrying on with solutions with the implementation model, if you've ever completed an implementation model, then you'll be listed in the progress update. Again, I feel like a broken record here, but you'll either be highlighted in story format or you will be notated in the text in some way. Next slide. And then the other way that an implementation model that you can be highlighted for this is if you have a new implementation model since the last Better Building Summit, you'll be highlighted in the Summit plenary presentation. So it's a good way to be recognized publicly for that achievement. Chantal, or David, next slide. And then the last way that you can really utilize the implementation model for recognition is creating an innovative implementation model. Please don't ask me how innovative is defined, because David and I are not involved in that. I think that's probably done at the HUD and DOE level. So I have a little bit of blinders on in that regard. I will tell you that there are very few implementation models that are created, and so your odds of getting an innovative implementation model is actually pretty good. So in this, you would get highlighted in the progress update. Typically, that is in a actually a story format, not just in the partner listing itself. And then you're also highlighted in the Summit plenary presentation, either whether it's verbally or in the actual PowerPoint presentation. Next slide. So this is what the actual, when I talk about in the progress report, what your implementation model can do for you. Here you'll see there are, let's see, 2 multifamily partners on the screen right now. We've got Balfour Beatty and, Balfour Beatty and NHT Enterprise with the renewable solar financing model. So those are the 2 implementation models that were highlighted last year in the progress report. So it'll be exciting to see who gets recognized this year for their implementation models last year. Next slide. So I think before we move on to this panel, David, maybe it looks like somebody, at least one person has a question out there. Chantal, are you seeing a question, or do you want to do the poll and then answer questions while the poll is collecting?
There aren't any questions. There's one hand raised, but I answered that one already.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Well, then let's move forward with the poll itself. So, do you plan to share your data with us this year in order to get recognized? And then, David, I'm going to hand it over to you because I think this is where you take over on data.
I do. Thank you. So, as you all fill out the poll, I'm going to hopefully not mess up the display here. Just advance a few things. This is a typical data display, and Chantal told me when the poll is complete. For Denver Housing Authority, this was actually for the summit 2 years ago. It is their 2013 data. Last year they were at 9.5% savings, and I talked with the authority just earlier this week, and they assure me they'll be over 10. So they're preparing their data to be shared as we speak. So that's always nice. They've been, I hate to say, a poster child for data sharing, but they have been. And they're going to receive a couple of recognitions this year, and those that we'll cover shortly. So one thing I will add, if you've collected your data, and if you've already shared it, then you have the foundation of a showcase project. You have baseline data information and current data information for a single property. Pick a property, let's write about it. The hardest part for me in writing showcases has always been getting the data, and it's been hard for you folks as well. I don't know Amy's experience, but we all seem to struggle with that. So with the shared data, we don't have that struggle anymore. And if you have a unique approach to having collected it, whether it's dealing with the utility or dealing with your tenants or dealing with your staff or dealing with yourself, share that in an implementation model if you think others could benefit from the approach that you took. So data is, of course, why we're all gathered here today and why the BBC was created. So how are we looking for the poll, Chantel?
David, I just closed it, and now I'm sharing the results.
Okay.
Look at that, David, 94%.
Do you plan to share
Yeah.
data? All
Yeah.
right. Get
Bring
their
it on.
names. Right. Get their names and numbers, and we're going to call them all. Well, at the end of the slide, this presentation, the last slide has Amy's and my and Tyler Fitch's names and numbers. So you call us, you share the data. I'm going to jump to the next slide unless we have any questions. And I have no idea how to do this, but I know how to crunch data. So data achievement. So any data shared for 2015. If you share all of your data with us, great. I mean, that's wonderful. You get progress update recognition. We're looking for 3 stars next to your name, I'm told. A data recognition, a showcase recognition, and an I am recognition. I learned that the other day. I don't know if you picked up on that, Amy. But we'd like to see some 3-star people out there. So if you share your 2015 data, great. You get progress update status and recognition, and then White House event recognition. And who among us would like to go to White House? Hey, I submit my data every year. They don't give me an invitation, but now is your chance to do it. So just get us your data and let us edit, let us scrub it. So there are some challenges, and there are actually 5 categories of data recognition. The first 3 are specific to all, excuse me, not specific. They cover all partnerships in all building sectors. So if you submit your data for 2015, portfolio-wide, you get recognition. The next level is if a partner is on track to meeting their savings goal. And this is just a very simple linear equation. If you took a 10-year pledge to reduce energy use by 20%, it's 2% per year would be the linear way of thinking. If you are in your 2nd, 3rd year of partnership and you're at 6% savings with a 3-year date, looking behind on your signature line, then you're on track. You could do 12% right up front, and 6 years out, you can still be getting recognition. What DOE doesn't want to see is someone with 1% savings for 9 years, and then we're going to get everything in the last year. So just to call out slow and steady progress, there's a separate level of recognition, whether it be through the summit plenary presentation or a letter from the DOE secretary or the HUD secretary. That's what you get for staying on track, 2% per year. The other level would be in terms of sharing data if the partnership is halfway or more to their savings goal. So that's a big milestone, and this came up in conversation the other day. because next year we'll be 5 years into the Better Buildings Challenge, the 5th summit, the 5th set of results coming in. How do they stand? There were, I think, goals set for the entire challenge to meet. And how are they going to be achieving those? So not only is the challenge looking to achieve its goal, but they're looking to reward partners who get at least halfway or more to their savings goals. And again, this occurs year after year. So if you hit 10% this year and you don't slide backwards, up until you hit your next milestone, you're always going to get that presentation. So the next two levels of data recognition deal specifically with multifamily. And I want to say we've been harping on this, but we've been harping on this through webinars and emails and creating of tracking tools to help in benchmarking. We had this last year. It is, again, in the mix this year, and it is for multifamily partners who submit 100% of their own paid receipts. We all work in, the wild west of utility data known as, multifamily building sector, where split incentive is a common term we're all too familiar with. You have owner-paid receipts, you have tenant-paid receipts. Who benefits from efficiency measures? How do you collect this data? Are there laws? Are there protocols? This is what's being worked out, and in many ways successfully, with the Better Buildings Challenge. And if you are able to collect all of your own paid receipts, post them to Portfolio Manager or share them through a template to let us know the size and scope of your portfolio, we want to give you recognition for that. So I know we had a few people achieve that last year, Amy, though I'm not recalling the number. Tyler Fitch may know it, but they're out there, and we want to see more of you. And this is the foundation of the next and the new recognition criteria, which is partner submit data for a partial data display. We unveiled this in a prior webinar, and that is anyone who has shared the tenant data as well as the owner paid receipts for a portion of their portfolio. We call it WB data, which is whole building. So every meter, every BTU, whether it be kilowatt, therm, gallons of oil, cordwood, we don't care. We want it accounted for. And if you can get us, first, all of your owner paid receipts, and second, at least 30% of your portfolio, we need whole building data. So that's taking buildings, tenants that are cooperative, getting the whole building data for 30% of your portfolio, and then sharing with us either informally in an email or a conversation, or formally through a showcase project or an IM, which would be ideal for everyone, that you have a plan in place, and this is how you collected the data and will continue to collect the data. So if you'd like posting the progress report, if you'd like to help DOE and HUD better understand the multifamily sector so that it can be better served by everyone's tax dollars, share the partial displays, 30% or better. We've identified, Tyler and I and Amy have identified at least 6 prime candidates, and that could easily double thanks to the efforts of some very active partners. So 5 levels of recognition for data. Just submit your 2015 data. Doesn't matter if it's your benchmark year, doesn't matter if it's the first time out that you're doing it. Submit it, you get recognition. If you are on track for for 22% per year, you're going to get the recognition as well. And if you're halfway home to your level of recognition, and I think we have 3 partners that will do that this year in the multifamily sector. Owner paid receipts and partial data displays. Those are multifamily specific, and we'd love to help you achieve those. So without any other questions, I don't have a whole lot else to say, Amy, with regards to data.
Great. Thank you, David. That was a great overview. So Actually, Chantel, do we have any questions? I just want to check in before I...
Yes, we have one question in the queue.
Okay.
Is it possible to create more than one implementation model? We likely won't be ready by March, but may have 2 distinct topics worthy of discussion by the 2017 summit.
Oh, absolutely. You can create as many implementation models as you'd like. Yeah, it definitely is. And whoever your account manager is, whether it's me or David, we're happy to help you think those through. And like I said, we also have some, right now, I can't speak for forever, but this year we do have some staff time available to help you parse out an implementation model. So.
And could I add one thing that applies to showcase projects as well?
Yes, we actually have several partners who have multiple showcase projects. So we'll take all we can get. Okay, great. So moving on to participation, this is the last category, and it's the last 2 ways that you can get recognized. The first is if you're a new Better Buildings Challenge partner since the last Better Buildings Summit. So with that, I'll say welcome if this is your first webinar, and if you will be gaining automatic recognition for that, that's great. So welcome to the Better Buildings Challenge. You'll be highlighted in the progress update, the summit plenary presentation. You'll get a letter from DOE or HUD secretary, and you'll be invited to the White House recognition event. So next slide. And then drum roll. Okay. Water participation. This is a big one. I know a lot of multifamily partners have been itching for this to be included formally. Based on the results of our pilot that we did last year or year before, it turned out very well, and HUD's very excited to announce the ability to participate in the Better Buildings Challenge using water data as well. If you're interested in joining the Better Buildings Challenge with a water commitment, please email or call your account manager. Email might be easiest. We will need to get some information from you. We'll need an email from you highlighting, like your commitment amount and all that fun stuff. So just, I would say, reach out to your account manager on the water participation. You will be recognized for participating in the water portion of the Better Buildings Challenge and the progress update, and also in the summit plenary presentation. So, and like, it was a great question that was asked before around, next year are we going to see an increase, a data water, increase when you set a new goal for goal achievement? Yeah, it would be interesting to see. So it's definitely something that we need to start thinking through internally. So, next slide. Okay, that's it. That is it.
That is it.
All right, fantastic.
We have
David,
another question in the queue.
Oh, great.
For multifamily buildings, how do you formally select your baseline for the owner-paid energy savings and for the whole building energy savings?
How do you select your baseline? Your baseline year is selected. You can go back no more than 3 years from the year of your agreement, and you must have the data for it, and preferably all intervening years as well. We really don't establish an EUI, an energy use intensity rating, for just owner-paid receipts. We could, but that would mean we'd always have to call out that data separately, and that's not part of the program. But for you, why not? We always run these side little metrics, so you could talk to us about that. But the baseline year you establish, and it could be no more than 3 years prior to your agreement date. And once the data comes in, the whole building data for that year, we just take the average, not the average, excuse me, take the total square footage, the total KBTUs, we divide them, and that's your baseline number that you're trying to improve upon. So let me know, or Chantel know, if that answers your question sufficiently. Anyone raising their hand, Chantel?
And if it doesn't, you can always, if David's response didn't address the answer, you can certainly email your account manager and have more of a conversation. And that seems like a pretty in-depth
Right.
question. So, are there any other questions?
No, no more questions.
Okay, fantastic. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Here you see the contact information for David and Amy, me, and Tyler. Feel free to reach out to us for any of your questions about the Better Buildings Challenge, anything that we highlighted here today. We are going to be sending this out to you via email, so you should receive that, I would say, sometime within the next few days. So that you can keep, you can go back and reference this if you want to as you're moving toward gaining recognition for this year. And with that, we'll say have a lovely afternoon.